You've built a business that you bootstrapped to over $500 million in revenue.
I wanted to run a hobby business. I just got this crazy idea that my hobby business was going to be like sending grass-fed beef to people's houses. I'm not a big believer in business plans because every time I've written one, they change right away.
Yeah, you could have written the whole business plan, then you literally went to Whole Foods and you're like, oh shit, it's wrong.
Right, totally. My first purpose was like, I'm going to prove that I can start a hobby business and not raise outside capital, chip on my shoulder. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, that's done. What's next? ButcherBox has always revealed another deeper purpose for me to be going for.
All right, guys, bang, bang. I've got Mike here. You've built a business that you bootstrapped, raised no outside money, to over $500 million in revenue, which makes you seem like an absolute genius. And a bunch of people are like, how the hell did he do that? We'll talk about that in a second. You also previously raised $30 million for a company that you learned a lot of things not to do doing. Talk a little bit about kind of that first big experience trying to build a business, raise a bunch of money, and like it not work out, and kind of how you thought about, hey, where did we screw up, and like what lessons did we learn, so that then it set the ground for ButcherBox to eventually become this huge business.
Yeah, for sure. So I was 26 years old. My co-founder and I were best friends, and we wanted to do something. We didn't know what we were going to do, but we had to find something to start or to run.
Get rich.
Yeah, get rich. That's right. And it was like a very financially motivated, very much American dream. Like we want to like do something ourselves, make money, stop having a boss. And my co-founder loved custom woodworking. He had just bought a coffee table on this website, custommade.com, and he's talking to the woodworker who made his table, and the woodworker's like, I get all my work from Custom Made, and I pay $35 a year for my subscription. This is like a $2,000 coffee table. And so we're like, this is great. Like everything you search for around custom furniture, if you typed in custom made bookshelf or custom made desk, custommade.com showed up first. And these guys were cleaning up. So we bought the website off of a guy for $140,000.
Why did he sell it for so cheap?
That was 4 times revenue. So, you know, okay. I had been transitioning out of a job, and I had written him months prior. And then when I left the job, my last job that I worked for someone, he wrote me like two days later and was like, I'll sell. And so we didn't have $140,000. We put down $5,000 and had 90 days due diligence, where we ran around town, ran around Boston trying to convince people to give us money. And this is like 2008, right when Bernie Madoff just ran off with everyone's money in Boston. So it was like, it's a tough time to be raising money.
It's funny that you say 2008 Bernie Madoff, not global financial crisis.
Yeah,
like
too.
Like the bigger thing was Bernie Madoff.
No, in Boston, I mean, like if you were the people we were connected to and trying to raise money from in Boston had like just been personally impacted by Bernie Madoff.
Jesus, and they're pissed, or like they're like
pissed, real pissed.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
All my money went to him, and now it's gone. And so we bought this website, and we started this subscription business where these woodworkers would pay an annual fee to be on the site. And we tried to like upgrade the site, but we made so many mistakes on that website. We just
How many of the
it.
mistakes around the website were you're young and didn't know, versus like you had this theory of we'll make more money or it'll be a better product if we do X, and like your assumption was just wrong?
At the beginning, it was really like we're young and we didn't know. Like,
okay.
I look at entrepreneurship now, and I think it's a lot better resource than it was. Like, if you don't know how to build a website, you can find that information. In 2008, like, I didn't feel like there were a lot of people out there who could explain to us, like, here's what you do and here's what you don't do.
There's podcasts, there's blogs, there's Twitter, there's like all this stuff.
For sure.
And then you also like know many more of the people who've been doing this for now, a decade plus after 2008 that you can reach out to and ask.
Right. And so we didn't have any of that. We built a website that was really bad. And, we had all these makers calling in complaining about how all their work dried up. The SEO dried up. We just it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And it kept crashing. And
is there a moment where you're like, all right, we raised some money. We bought the website. We thought we were improving it. Oh, shit. We may have actually been destroying it. Like, is there like a one moment where that like hits you?
That was pretty much every day. I mean, we just did our best to just destroy all the value we purchased. So then we raised a little more money. All of this was friends and family at this point. So we had gotten up to like $1 million of raised capital, mostly people that we had worked with before in real estate. And then we decided, everyone's like raising money from VCs. Like, we should go raise money from VCs.
Of course.
Yeah. So we go out in like, what was it? It was the summer of 2011. So we go out in 2011 and we're going around with like, hey, we're a woodworker listing service. And every VC is like, hell no. Woodworker listing service? Not in a million years. Like, not a venture thing. This won't work, blah, 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 blah. But nevertheless, like, we were really good at persistence and sales. So we just kept going. And I remember this moment like vividly. We built this feature called the job board, where a customer could like say, I'm looking for a custom bookshelf in Lake Placid, New York. And then a local maker could like bid on it and say, hey, I could do that for you. And the reason why we built it is because when we would call these woodworkers and say, hey, we have this, it's like, there's all this work on here, you should join. They were like, well, how do I know there'll be work? And so we built this publicly facing job board that we'd say, oh, here's your zip code. Look, there's been 3 posts today that you could respond to. Anyway, so I'm in this VC meeting and I'm like, pull up the job board and pull it up. And I'm like, all we have to do is stand in between these transactions. And they're literally like coming in, just like, boom.
Oh, so
boom.
it's like working.
It's working.
Yeah.
People are posting stuff.
Yeah, you're like, you ever seen a live demo that worked?
Yeah. And we're like, all we have to do is stand in between these transactions and we'll have the largest marketplace for custom stuff. And as soon as I said the word marketplace, everything changed. Like the VCs went from like, no, to like marketplace. You could be the next Airbnb. And I'm like, yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, if that's what it's going to take, like, no problem. Yes, we could be the next Airbnb. And they're like, great, we're in. And so
we write marketplace on the top of the website.
Well, and I think, it's like, I have a lot to say about VCs in my experience, but one of the things that's really important is that like VCs are pattern matchers, right? So if you're out raising money, the more that you can point to this being like part of a pattern that they're currently very interested in, like they say yes. That's just how it works. So in 2011, everyone was trying to chase the next marketplace. Uber had just gone out, Airbnb, like people are like, I can't miss the next marketplace. And that worked. So we raised like $2 million. 5 months later, we raised another 4. And then a year later, we raised 18. And so it went from like nobody wanted to touch this thing to like everybody wanted to touch this thing. Now, the problem was that the business that we were selling people on, this marketplace where we were going to stand in between a maker and a buyer, it didn't work. Like nobody wanted to actually transact that way. So so there were lots of people interested in projects, but they generally were very fickle. They'd fall apart. The maker would pull them off platform because it was easier for them, and for a whole host of reasons, it just like didn't.
I was interested in the custom bookcase until you told me it was $20,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I'm not interested.
Yeah, exactly. Like I want IKEA prices, but I want it to be custom, and so we had a really hard time vetting people and building a liquid marketplace. But because we had raised all this money, and because we had said the word marketplace, and because that's what people invested in, it was very hard to unwind it and be like, hey, you know what? We're just going to be a subscription business now. Like we couldn't be. And so we had this subscription business that was like a pretty decent business before we raised a bunch of money. And we just like, we got stuck. And then it became like, okay, well, it's got to be your team. That's the problem. So we had, Google. So Google was one of our investors. They're like, hey, do you want us to send our engineers around just to like, I don't know, poke around, do an audit of what's happening on your site? And we're like, yeah, of course. Like Google, that's awesome. They come in, they're like, yeah, this is bad. Like you guys need to scrap this whole thing and rebuild it. And we're like, oh shit. Okay. And so over the course of a year, we...
Thanks for your opinion, but go back to Google.
Well, I didn't have the confidence to say that. That's what I should have said.
Yeah.
Right?
What did you say?
What I did instead is we're going to fix this. And we ended up basically firing everybody. And so I heard this analogy once of a startup being like you're hacking through the jungle with machetes and you're just looking for a trail somewhere. And what you need is people who just have, are relentless at hacking and finding a trail. And then they find a trail, and maybe that trail leads to a dirt road. And in the custom made business, we got to this dirt road. There was a nice, shiny Google-funded bus on the dirt road. And I was like, I don't think you guys know how to drive. And I left them all in the jungle, all of them. So all my friends, all the people who like built this thing from the beginning, all the people that were in the trenches with me, we left them all. And that is by far my biggest regret of the whole experience.
Were they pissed?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. It depends.
Yeah.
Some of them actually are now working for me at ButcherBox, which is cool. Some understood it. They understood like the pressures we were under. But yeah, a lot were super pissed because they helped me build this thing. And then at the very moment where it became like, oh, we attracted outside investment because of all the things you did, we're like, you're not good enough. And I mean, it's never easy to let people go and to do it on your terms instead of theirs. So, yeah.
So you do that. How do you get from like, we've raised whatever, $30 million, whatever it ends up being, to like, okay, this doesn't work, like it's over?
So it went something like this. First, it was the circular firing squad, like, this must be an engineering problem. This must be a product problem. This must be a marketing problem. Like basically every department by department, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault.
Everyone's problem but Google's.
Everyone's problem except like the investment thesis might not have been the right one. Then it became our problem. So my co-founder and I, it was like, we don't think you guys are the right people. It was like, okay. So then they made us like waive rights and, you know, kind of.
Did it get nasty?
Yeah, a little nasty.
Can whatever you're allowed to say, you can take out names, whatever. But like, I think there's a lot of people who only see the positive side of like interacting with investors. Yeah. Like, what can you tell me about the nasty part of it? Like, did they pressure you guys to do things? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, so the nastiest thing that happened was we had negotiated, as all should do, that despite the fact that we had investors, that when it came to management decisions, including replacing ourselves, that was up to us. Right. And so if you're raising capital and it's competitive, you can get something like that put in there. Most founders don't even know that they should negotiate for that. So we negotiated for that. And at the end, it was like, you need to waive that because we're going to try to replace you and we want you to waive that. So if we find someone great, like we can replace you. And we were like, no, like what do you mean? You already negotiated for that. And they basically were like, we're going to blackball you. We're going to make sure you don't raise any more money and you'll be dead.
Yep.
You're going to erase it. And we're like, okay, like,
sure.
You know, you back down pretty fast.
Yeah.
At least we back down pretty fast. Now, you know,
if you could go back to that moment now, knowing everything you know, what would you have done? Like just told them to fuck off?
Well, the problem with the business was we were like, look, we're burning $500,000 a month, $500,000 a month, a lot of money. We're like, this business we're not going to make it. Like, there's a wall. We're going to run out of money. We're not going to make it. We need to like dramatically reduce staff, change our business model, do something different. Like, and our investors were like, no.
Got it.
You know, like basically at first it was, well, we're going to try to replace you guys as CEO or you as CEO, Mike. And we want a new CEO to see like a full company of people. That was the reasoning. And then after that, it was like, well, we're going to try to sell and we want the new company to see like lots of people. And like neither of those were very good investment philosophies, but nevertheless, we kept burning money. And so at the very end, we had taken a small venture debt line as part of the 18 million. And that bank was like, your bank balance is below what you owe us. And none of your investors are willing to pony up anymore. We want to do what they call a friendly foreclosure. So they basically did a foreclosure.
Friendly, they just throw that in for
just to make it sound better,
just to make you like smile while they do it.
No, as I understand it, like a lot of these venture banks work kind of on the side of venture capital firms, right? So they have lots of deals together, and so it's basically like
they're playing a long-term game with each other.
They're like, look, we're the debt provider. We come out first. There's not enough debt here. Like we don't get the big return. You're the equity provider. Kill this deal, and we, on the next one we'll take care of you. And so ended up getting foreclosed on. We fired everybody. Then my co-founder, the relentless bastard, went back, took it out of bankruptcy, took 4 of the people who were still there, and is still running the company. But did everything we wanted to do, pivoted it, leaned out the team, did all the things,
and wiped all the equity holders. So like
everyone got zero.
None of the original investors benefit.
Correct.
Post. And neither does the debt.
Yep.
Got it.
So the only saving grace of the whole thing, investment wise, is as part of the 18, because the deal was so oversubscribed, we were able to do secondary. So we were able to offer all of our original like friends and family 3x their money. We were able to take some off the table, small, but like we were able to take some off the table. That was the only saving grace. Otherwise, I would have been 7 years, lost everyone's money, and had nothing to show for it.
How many of the friends and family took the secondary?
Most.
Okay.
Not my mother.
That's well, that's bad. But that's better than
like,
most.
I have faith in you. It's like,
Yeah. No, Mom, please don't.
next time it's like, Mom, this is it.
Take it. But like, what's interesting to me is obviously secondaries became very popular, especially last year in 2021. And every single mathematical formula you could think of outside of this is the next Facebook, this is the next Airbnb, this is the next what, I mean, not even Airbnb, but like, these big companies, you should take some of the money off the table, even if it's just 1x what you invested so you don't lose money on the deal, right? And now you're playing with house money, whatever. But because it's been so celebratized and like it's so sexy to be the seed investor or whatever in like the next unicorn, that becomes the like $100+ billion company. Nobody was taking secondaries except for many of the founders were taking secondaries, right? But none of the early investors were because like, oh my God, such and such firm or this firm is like coming in, like they're smart. So like, I'm just going to ride.
Right.
And so it's very fascinating because like actually the math tells you to take the deal or at least part of the deal, but like psychology takes over and humans are dumb and we're just like, screw it, let's let it ride.
Well, one way that companies manufacture that is that they make it all or nothing on secondary. So they say you have to sell your entire position or nothing. And so in a lot of cases, then people are like, well, do I want to sell everything? But in the cases where you're actually able to sell a piece, like I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be selling a piece, especially because, I think what the past year has taught all of us is like everything looks great when you're riding high, but when the tide goes out, like you want to make sure you have a little bit of liquidity in your back pocket. So
you get into bad times.
Yes.
Thankfully, friends and family, for the most part, are okay.
Yes.
They wanted the Grand Slam. They got a single. Fine. How do you go from that to ButcherBox?
Yeah. So I actually had all of these designs to take 100 days off. I had a 5-month-old daughter at the time. And
she's not 5 months anymore.
No, yeah, she's grown up a little bit. She's 8 now. So I had a 5-month-old daughter, and I was like, I'm just gonna I'm gonna take 100 days off and just like lick my wounds and maybe go to a meditation retreat and like figure out what's what. I ended up taking the weekend off and then starting ButcherBox. And I did because
that's so gracious of you. You took a whole weekend.
Memorial Day weekend, so it was a long weekend. It was got an extra day there. So I had been, so my wife has an autoimmune condition, a thyroid condition, and we were following all of these elimination diets, like anti-inflammation diets to like help her with her condition. And they all said eat grass-fed beef, and we couldn't find it. Couldn't find it in the grocery store, or maybe there'd be ground beef, but there wouldn't be anything else. And I just became obsessed with this, like, well, how do you get grass-fed beef? And I ended up, like, in the last year as custom-made was failing, I ended up starting to buy cow shares from different farmers, local farmers.
What is that?
Cow share is where you buy, like, half a cow. And so you get, like, 2 massive trash bags full of meat that's all different cuts from a cow. And so the cow share was too big to fit in my freezer, so I started selling it to like my friends. So I basically like, split it up like a drug dealer and get my little head stash for free.
Were you diluting?
Yeah, diluting exactly. And so somebody who was in my office was like, "This would be so much better if it was just delivered to my house." And I was like,
oh, you were like saying like, hey, you can come buy it, but you gotta like come to my house.
Yeah, well, they were. I would bring it to work, and it was like people from work who would buy all these shares off of me. And he's like, this would be so much better if it was delivered to my house. I was like, yeah, that would be better. And at the time, I was looking for. I wanted to run a hobby business, and I wanted it to be like modeled after like the Tim Ferriss 4-Hour Work Week. I'm going to be living in Argentina. I'm going to pick up my laptop, look at it for 10 minutes, close my laptop, go about my day. And I thought a subscription business, especially because of my experience with custom made, that a subscription business would be like much better because it's recurring revenue. So once you get it going, it's just like, it just feeds on itself. And so I just got this crazy idea that my hobby business was going to be like sending grass-fed beef to people's houses. And so I didn't know how to like put all the pieces together. I didn't know how to, I mean, I ate meat, but I'm not a meat guy. I didn't know how to buy meat. I didn't know how to ship meat. I didn't know like the first thing about any of it.
Did you, so hold on, before we kind of get all the way into what you did, you're doing this for like a year.
Just kind of poking around buying
Yeah, this
meat.
is like me plus leftovers, right? Did you like run actual tests? Like, did you like set up a website or anything? Or was it like, oh, this sounds cool. It could be a hobby business. Like, we're starting a business.
Yeah. So the idea was, so first of all, I didn't know how to do anything. And then I hunted down the former head of operations of Omaha Steaks, which at the
People
time,
who would come to like your house and like try to sell you steaks.
they do that very rarely, but yes, they do some of that.
Yeah.
But it's a $500 million gift giving business. It's been around for 100 years, catalog and direct mail and all that. And so he was the guy who like knew how to buy the product, how to ship the product.
Interesting.
And so I reached out to him on LinkedIn and he's like, yeah, my non-compete ended. Like, I'll help you out. And so then pieces started coming together. It's like, oh, okay, here's how you do it. He's like, here are some farms and here's like the shipping facility. And like, so things started to coming together. And so when I was leaving Custom Made, to me, it was like I could either wait and like kind of lick my wounds and figure things out, or I could just get started on this new venture as fast as possible.
It's like a rebound.
Yeah. And because I didn't think it was going to be very big, like I was literally like, if I have 1,000 subscribers and I make $20 per subscriber, it's $20,000 in gross profit. I'll outsource some stuff to like a couple Filipinos, and I'll probably be able to bring like $10,000 to $12,000 a month and like cover my nut. That was it. That was it.
That's the dream for like a lot of people.
No kidding. That is the dream. I like to say that I failed miserably at that dream. Like I did. That is not what happened. And the other thing was, I thought that the way I wanted to start was via Kickstarter, because with Custom Made, it was a two-sided marketplace. So there's a buyer and a seller. And so as CEO of Custom Made, I went to school on like marketplaces and marketplace dynamics, and there's these points of time in marketplaces where they reach like saturation on the internet, and then there's huge opportunity for people who know how to play by the rules. So early days eBay, it was like there used to be stores where they would sell your stuff for you because they knew how to like write good descriptions and take good photos. Nowadays, eBay's figured out how to like make that all part of like the app, and that opportunity is gone. But it was a big opportunity for a long time. Amazon Marketplace, Etsy Marketplace, people are taking advantage of these arbitrages. I thought Kickstarter was like rife for that, and it was. So our whole thing was to get the Kickstarter verified badge. Because we noticed that Kickstarter Verified put you on the homepage, put you on the top of the food page, put you in search. Kickstarter would send a tweet about you, like they would do all these things. And so we tried to deconstruct how do you get Kickstarter Verified, which was one part like blowing through your goal in the first day and one part momentum, and like we just...
How did you deconstruct that? So like you realized,
just
okay,
looked at stuff.
You just started analyzing all the ones that were verified.
Yeah, we like look at things that went live and like... oh, look, they got the badge. Oh, they got the badge like right after they did XYZ. So just kind of like became students of what was happening on Kickstarter. And so we launched in September. So I took off Memorial Day weekend, and I actually had an intern who I paid $10 an hour start with me on the Tuesday after Memorial Day. Because I was really worried about starting a business by myself. Like I didn't think I'd have the discipline to like actually work all the time. But I knew if somebody was there, like this
I know I can't take more than 4 days off, but like I'm actually worried I can't do the work.
Yeah. No, I just thought I would just like sit on the couch and like, not work. But I knew if somebody was there being like, all right, what's next, Mike? I'd be like, okay, do this. And that's how we got going.
An intern's much better than a co-founder at that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of businesses fail because of co-founder dynamics. I'm blessed to still be very close with my co-founder from my first company, but I never want to have a co-founder again.
Great guy, but
no, awesome guy. It's just like when the decision has to be like there needs to be somebody in charge.
Yeah.
Even if they're a co-founder, you need to figure out like, okay, who's in charge here though?
And I think most great businesses, even if there are multiple co-founders, 3, 4, 5, whatever, if you even ask them, like who has the final say?
Yeah.
They all defer to one person if the business ends up being great.
Yep.
Because if not, there becomes all kinds of issues. And I've also seen companies that said, okay, we're going to draw a line in the sand. All the decisions that relate to X, this co-founder decides. All the other ones, this co-founder decides. And like even that's a little messy sometimes.
Yep.
But at least there is some final decision maker that everyone agrees on for that specific topic.
Yeah, we had a card. So ours was like the decision card. So if we were at a impasse and could not make a decision together, then somebody who started, my co-founder started with a card. It was like, he could be like, I'm pulling the card. And then whatever the decision is, like we go with what he wants to do.
Yep.
But then I get the card.
Oh, that's slick.
Yeah. So it's like, you better use it on something good because then I'm going to have the card and you're not going to have the card. He actually never pulled the card.
So you never got the card either?
Yeah, I never got the card. So I don't know if it worked or didn't, but
Yeah.
We ended up being able to settle all disputes with just a lot of arguing.
All right. So you got ButcherBox. Do you know what the name of this thing is at the beginning? Or
Yeah, well, I started with meatwithaname.com, which would have been really bad.
Meatwithaname.com?
Meat with a name, because like the animal has a name because it's
yeah.
being well cared for. And then
I'm glad you did not
Yeah,
go
no,
with
that would have
name.
been bad.
Yeah.
Then a buddy of mine was like, what about ButcherBox? And ButcherBox.com was taken by...
How'd you get it?
We got it 2 years into the business. It was a butcher in McLean, Virginia. And he had built it because he wanted to do butcher boxes and ship them out. And so we had getbutcherbox.com for a long time or for a few years. And then I just kept harassing him. And finally he's like, I'll sell you, fine.
How much?
I think we paid 10 grand for it.
Okay.
And at that point it was like, that's a no brainer. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we came up with the name ButcherBox. The first thing that happened was I sent my intern out to like Whole Foods to talk to people about how much meat were they buying per visit or per month, how much did they pay for different types of meat, how much did they know about grass-fed beef, and what we learned within one day of just surveying people is our model, which was going to be we were going to ship a box of grass-fed beef, was just not going to work because people don't eat that much beef in a month. And so people are like, I would definitely sign up for something if it had chicken and pork and beef, but I'm not going to do it for just beef.
Got it.
And so we immediately were like, okay, ButcherBox is not just beef. We're going to do beef, chicken, and pork. Our Kickstarter was beef, chicken, and pork, and you could choose which box you wanted, like all beef, beef and pork, beef, chicken, and pork.
Were you worried that introduced complexity either on the user side or on like the operation side?
Yeah, it definitely increased a little bit of complexity on the operations side because now you're dealing with like 3 different species instead of one, and you have to figure out like what the grass-fed equivalent is for pigs or for chickens or whatever. But it was definitely what the member wanted, and I wanted to be able to ship a box every month to the member, and it just wasn't going to work if it was beef. So it just got more.
You
complicated.
had to do it.
Yeah. But the thing that we did, so we start. I'm like, I'm only going to put $10,000 into this company. I'm not raising any money because it's supposed to be a hobby, and like, all right, 10 grand, I can recoup that. This will work. And so less than 10 grand to start the company, Kickstarter, all that. And the other thing that we did, because we didn't have any money, is we sent out a what we call the curated box. So if you chose beef and chicken, we're going to send you beef and chicken, but we're going to send you whatever we want. Like you don't get a choice as the customer. We've since changed that. Now we have like a custom box and you can choose from like 50 different products and whatnot. But at the time, in order to not have to carry any inventory, we basically were like, we're going to send you whatever. So the January box would be like, here are the cuts that are going to be in the January box. So we could bring in the inventory, run through the inventory, bring in more inventory for February, and keep going.
So this is interesting because you raised no money.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, normally you would have to raise money. You then would go spend a bunch of money on marketing, acquire customers, and then those customers would almost be like just-in-time customers because you may get them on Tuesday and ship a box out on Wednesday, and like you're playing an inventory game, which you're talking about here. Because you weren't holding any inventory, did you tell people like, hey, you have to be subscribed by like January 14th to get the box that ships on like January 21st? Like, how did you operationalize not being overextended, not having to put a bunch of money in?
Is OKX a new race car? Maybe, but actually no.
OKX is one of the world's leading crypto trading apps.
OKX.
So we did hold inventory. We just ran it so tight that so boxes were always going out.
Okay.
And the place that we started with had a cutting facility attached to the shipping facility.
Smart.
So we were able to like move stuff pretty quickly, pretty just in time. And they were actually, I mean, one of the things that I say, but people are like, how did you grow the business without raising money? Like, I'm stuck with inventory. What do I do? And one of the things was the company that cut our meat was actually remarkably bad at invoicing us for the meat. So, it's like the $30,000 order of New York strips. They like forgot about for a month and then would bill us for it.
Just so happens you got $30,000 of customer revenue in.
Yeah, exactly. So and then
find dumb vendors who have bad operations is a key component to building a self-sustaining business.
Bad operations, yes, or bad billing department. And then we ended up like over time, we've actually financed the inventory using debt, not
how does that work? Just for people who spend all the time in the software world, like how do you finance what would be inventory?
Well, so it's a physical good, right? So it's a hunk of meat, and so that has a value to it. And so there are lending institutions that will lend against inventory, and. Yeah, so we actually started with our fulfillment center did a program where they would finance our inventory, and then there are lenders who will finance against inventory, and you can get a pretty low rate because if you default, they get all your inventory, and that has they can get 70 cents on the dollar or something like that for selling it. So as we got operations up and showed that we were like profitable and like a real thing, we were able to do that. Which is, inventory, from my experience in our business as well as mentoring lots of other people, inventory is an area where I think a lot of people like start thinking, well, I need to raise money to fund inventory. And it's really a debt problem. It's not an equity problem. And I think a lot of people that's the point where they're like, okay, I'm going to go raise money versus trying to figure out different funding options to finance it.
So Tuesday after Memorial Day, when you start this thing, you know none of this.
Yeah, none.
You're like emailing or LinkedIn with the Omaha steak person.
Yep.
And you have an intern. How do you go from, I don't know, a stranger and an intern to like, okay, we're live on Kickstarter and like we get the verified badge and like game on?
Yeah.
What do you do there?
Yeah. So first we had to, I had been playing around with Kickstarter for a while, trying to figure out like what's happening here. And so you have to have like a plan of what you're going to do with Kickstarter. So for us, it was like, first of all, I want to be able to ship out these boxes like pretty much immediately. Like so our Kickstarter was like September 9th through October 8th. And we were shipping out boxes by like the 20th because we wanted to like get product in people's hands and then roll them to a subscriber. So we just built a plan of like, here are all the things that we need to do. Here are all the people that need to say stuff. And then it just became, we were into the Lean Startup book and just running kind of trying to figure out how to like run tests, understand what our customers would like. So we did a lot of surveying, a lot of like going to Whole Foods, a lot of like just getting in front of people and asking them questions. And came up with like, all right, we can launch this Kickstarter campaign, which you need a video for, which I had a friend who did stuff at Custom Made for us. You need like a brand, which I had another friend who ran a branding firm that helped us with. So I just compiled all these people to kind of like help with the original unveiling. And Yeah, I didn't want to spend a lot of money because I wanted it to be a hobby business. And so really everything went through that lens. It's kind of like, yeah, we can't do that because it's too much, or we can't focus on buying customers. During Kickstarter, we had this big aha moment where we had reached out to like anybody on Twitter who had mentioned grass-fed before, being like, hey, we're launching this company. Could you give us some press when we do? And there was this nutritionist, this paleo nutritionist called Chris Kresser. He's a doctor in California with a huge following. And he tweeted when we launched on Kickstarter, he tweeted about it. He was like, I tell you to eat grass-fed beef, and this is like a great place to go to get it. And we just saw all of these signups happen like right away, like tons of activity on Kickstarter. And we were like, that's interesting. Let's do more of that. And so
no grand boardroom plan of like influencer marketing. It's like Chris, the doctor from California, got a subscriber.
Notice the signals.
Who's Chris number 2?
Yeah. Notice the signals. Yeah. I mean, okay. So here's what I think about like in general with entrepreneurship. I think people spend way too much time on a business plan and no time on a lifestyle design. And I think one of the like most incredible things about being an entrepreneur is you get to actually define what you want your lifestyle to look like. And so what I encourage people to do is to go do like a visioning exercise of your 3 years in the future. Like, what does your lifestyle look like? What time are you getting up? What are you doing? Do you have kids? Are you hanging out with them in the morning? Are you doing a hard workout? Like, what does that lifestyle look like? I'm not a big believer in business plans because every time I've written one, like they change like right away.
Yeah, they're complete bullshit for a business that's starting because to your point, like you could have written the whole business plan, then you literally went to Whole Foods and you're like, oh shit, it's wrong.
Right, totally. And it anchors you on the wrong stuff. And then you're like, kind of like our first business, you're like, well, this is what we said we were going to do. And so in this business, it was like, no, we're just going to like observe and then make decisions based on our observations and then just keep going with this relentless pursuit of like helping the customer get what they want. And so influencers, it was like, I guess we're doing influencers. And then we went hard after influencers. And
what do those deals look like in the beginning? Are you just stroking checks to them or how's it work?
Yeah, no. So we didn't have any money. So we couldn't stroke checks. So what we did is we reached out to these influencers, and the way we reached out to them, we used to call it our Trojan horse, is we were sending this box of meat and it was curated, and we would like to throw in recipes about the things we sent. So if we send you pork back ribs, like, and here's a recipe on how to cook them. And so what we did is we went out to these influencers and we're like, hey, we saw this back ribs recipe, this Whole30 back ribs recipe. We're ButcherBox. We'd like to include it in our box and like put your name on it and a link to you and all this stuff. Like, would you be okay with that? And everyone said yes, because influencers trade on like influence and free marketing. And they're like, oh, by the way, what's ButcherBox? And we're like, oh, let us tell you what ButcherBox is. And we're like, oh, we're the service. Like, yeah, it probably aligns really well with your audience. By the way, we can't pay you to send an email, but what we can do is pay you a residual. So every month that subscriber maintains their membership, we can give you $10 or we can give you $15 or whatever the deal was at the time.
What's the most that anyone was making?
Oh, geez. I mean, we still have people north of $20,000 a month.
So there's some people who are, as a influencer / distribution partner, whatever, for ButcherBox, are making $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so for them,
good for them.
It was amazing for them.
Yeah.
And we backed into this like, unbeknownst to us, we backed into this really interesting moat because there have been other companies that have come along and sold meat in the mail. But what is the motivation of that influencer to go like work with them when they're already like getting this like residual income stream for
they don't even have to do
really
anything
no
else.
work.
Yeah, they don't even have to do anything else. And
That's
like,
right.
I just know I'm getting my $20,000 as long as my people don't leave.
So are you really going to like go hawk some other product and destroy that income stream? Probably not.
Yeah.
So we just like stumbled upon this like pretty sweet thing, and we went hard after. If you were like in paleo, Whole30, CrossFit, keto, like you almost definitely wrote about ButcherBox at some point. And we actually were like, I want to make sure it's not like, oh, we gamed everything. Like we actually provide a product that people were looking for and their audience was looking for. So it was like a win-win on both sides.
How much of it was the gamification / marketing and you guys are smart there versus like, nah, even if we weren't good at that stuff, like the people wanted this box. And so we would still have a pretty good business even with just the box without being experts on the market.
Yeah, I think to start with, it really was that people really wanted the box. And this is true today as well, but the industry for what we call claims-based meat, but like meat raised better, we can get into all what that means. In 2015 and 16 and 17 was really nascent, and people had like read Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma or had like read some of these blog posts that I had read and were like, I want to make a change. Okay, where do I go? And there's like nowhere to go. Mm-hmm. And then all the farms that you could buy from were really inefficient because they would sell like half a cow, which is 2 massive trash bags full of meat. Like, where are you going to put that? Or there'd be farms that would ship direct, but you'd have to like get it overnighted. So it was like $150 in shipping to send you like $20 worth of meat.
You had to be a hardcore.
Yeah.
And like big time believer with big dollars behind you in order to do kind of the traditional way. You guys basically brought a lower cost option to the table.
That's right. And then as we've scaled the industry, because at our size we're now like scaling the industry, we've continued to do it more and more efficiently to drive a better and better value to people so that they can actually afford to eat this way. Whereas like 5 years ago, that was not the case.
So we're like screwing around. We're like, oh yeah, this like small thing with an intern, whatever. Like you make over $500 million a year. You guys have raised new outside capital, right? $500 million in revenue per year is a fucking crazy number.
Thank you.
How do you go from like, oh, we were at Whole Foods and like somebody told us like, go include chicken to $500 million a year in revenue?
Yeah. So
what does that scaling look like?
So our revenue path was, so we did about $300,000 in the first year, 2015. We launched Kickstarter in September. So we did the Kickstarter and then we had like some follow-on subscribers. So $300,000, then we did 5 million. Then we did 33 million. So like those are 5x the business, 6x the business, 33 million, then 100 million, then 225 million. And then COVID hit. So we went from 225 to 450. So we didn't think we were going to double, but then we doubled the business again. And then we did 450 to 550 last year. So like slowing down a little bit.
You can't triple and double forever.
It turns out you can't. And then this year, we don't know where we'll end up. We were hoping to be north of 6, but I think that's going to be pretty tough just given the environment. We'll definitely be above last year, but it's going to.
So 300 to 5 is a big fucking leap, right? For any founder that's out there is like, I got to 300. They're like, okay, maybe this works, maybe not. Like you still have questions.
Right.
5 is like, I got a business, right? Is that all influencers?
No. So influencers was like really got us to like 35. And then we started doing.
Well, hold on. How do you get from 300 to 5? You get 300K to 5 million.
Yeah, so that's
what's
influencers.
Yep. Okay, all right.
5 to 30.
5 to 30, whatever you said.
Deep influencers.
That's like a stupid jump.
Yeah,
right. If you had investors, they would be like, in the LP update, you're the first company, right? They're like, hey, this Butcher Box went from 5 million to 30 million.
Yeah.
Look how smart we are.
Yeah.
That's all influencers too.
Yep.
So you basically got a 30 million in revenue in 2 years ish.
Yep.
Just going to people and being like, do you want to be included in the box? And like, can you tweet about us? That's wild.
Yep. And we built a very large program very quickly. We were maniacal about like reaching out to everybody.
And you guys are profitable this entire time?
Yeah. Always been profitable.
Pretty much from day one.
Yeah. So when we got to 33 though, it became harder and harder to scale. And so what we did, we thought we had enough cash flow coming in. What we did is, so every single subscriber that we signed up for the first 2.5 years had to be what I called box one profitable, which means we had to make money on you as a customer, that first box, fully loaded. So we'd call it dollars per box. So we knew the amount of dollars that we were making off of every box. Let's say it's $25. And so we knew that we had $25 to acquire you as a customer. And then if we acquired you for less than $25, when you resubscribed, which 90% of the people would or whatever,
all profit.
it's all gravy from there, right? And so that's how we built the business. So then you've got this bolus of subscribers who are starting to fund the business, and you're profitable on the first customers. After a while, we were like, this isn't going to work anymore. We need to dip into month 2. So then it was like, okay, we'll spend the profit of box 1 and box 2 on acquiring that customer because we had a little bit more cash flow and we're like not feeling like we're suffocating all the time.
And you also understood better about the retention, I'm assuming.
That's right. Like
right?
we
so
were
you knew,
then,
hey, if they buy the first box, they're probably going to buy the second.
Yeah, we were then understanding our lifetime value curves, how long a customer would stay for, what they were going to buy, how we could influence that and improve that. And so, yeah, I mean, fast forward to now, we're spending way deeper than 2 months in because we know we know the right customers to try to purchase, and then we know, we know how to keep them.
When you start to get the machine going, how many people are working at the business at this time? Is this like you, the intern, the Omaha Steaks person, and like another person, or are you at like 25 people, 50 people? Like,
no,
what did the employee
yeah.
base look like?
Yeah, we were pretty lean for several years. So, and mostly with interns, people who had a chip on their shoulder, something to prove, and didn't really have any knowledge of what we were doing. And so we brought in Juan, who came in today, was like a freshman at Bentley and was looking for something for the summer. And like, we brought on people like that. And then we just try to keep people going. The first like real hire we made was on Halloween of 2016. So we've been in business for like over a year. And it was a meat guy, this guy, Mike Billings. And I used LinkedIn once again, and I reached out to him and was like, hey, I've got this business. He had retired. He ran meat and seafood at BJ's, which is like Costco on the East Coast. And he had retired. He was like day trading on the beach and was bored. And I just somehow stumbled upon his thing, wrote to him, and he's like, yeah, I'll come talk to you.
What are you searching for on LinkedIn? I've done this many times. Like, okay.
That's what finally...
You and I are very similar.
That's what finally happened.
Like, you're just searching, like, what is this shit that I could search that might be in their LinkedIn profile so I could find this person who's been doing this for 35 years to get on a phone call so I could talk to him for an hour and take all the knowledge.
And you say shit because I've been asked like, well, where'd you find this guy? I was like, yeah, I was pooping. I was just like looking on the internet for this guy, you know. I was like, all right, let me just type in meat, and his LinkedIn said experienced meat executive.
He was waiting for someone. He literally was waiting for someone to search meat.
I got him
on LinkedIn.
So this guy comes in, and he's like expensive. He's like, my last company, I made over $200,000. Like, I don't need to make that much because I'll take some equity, but like he needs money. And at this point, we're shipping like 10,000 pounds of meat a month.
Jeez.
And I'm like, okay, so that's like a few thousand boxes. And I'm like, at this point, it feels like if we bring in somebody who knows what they're doing, they can probably make up their salary. And we were also like, we were not sending a great product. There was like, we did this Groupon one time, and there was like green meat that we shipped out and stunk, and like we had to give all these refunds. And like we had no idea what we were doing. We needed like a professional.
So
he was the first professional.
But this is interesting because you're like, hey, I had a bunch of like interns and young people and like people with like chips on their shoulder and stuff, but like Omaha Steaks guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Mike Billings.
Yeah.
Right? Retired meat executive. those people are like pretty experienced. So it's almost like you kind of sound like, I don't want to give you too much credit, but like you sound like you knew when to like, hey, we need just hungry people who are like young and willing to just work, nonstop versus like the experience.
Yeah.
Like, how did you know when you needed which one?
So I called this the barbell strategy.
Okay.
What I've found is actually the further people are in their career, the more they act like the young, hungry people.
Oh, interesting.
And so like you got like a 70-year-old who had a 30-year brilliant career, but now is like super bored and knows freaking everything. All they want to do is come in and like teach younger people. So these young, hungry people are like, hey, can I learn from you? They're like, yeah, great. Like, sit down. Let me tell you everything, where we've tended to have more trouble, and I don't want to say like for those on my team who are listening, this isn't as big of a problem, but like it's kind of that like late 30s to early 50s crowd where really want to make a name for themselves, need to be moving up within the company, also want to coach soccer, all of which, all this stuff is great.
Yeah.
But like when you have somebody who's super young and hungry and you can pair them with somebody at the end of their career, either they had retired and are doing another one or like are about to retire, that's where magic can happen.
It's the extremes. It's like, I've seen this over and over again, so it's interesting the way you're describing it, but it's like a lot of times venture capitalists, which we'll talk about whether you like them or not, we'll talk about like you want to find a founder who is amazing at one thing. Like if they're amazing at sales or they're amazing at technical ability or amazing at whatever, they don't need to be this super well-rounded person. A lot of times it's just like be amazing at one thing. Really what you're talking about here is like, oh, this person has so much knowledge that it's on the extreme end because they're at the end of their career. Or like this person is willing to go above and beyond and work so many hours and like be so tenacious that's on the extreme of the spectrum.
Yeah.
The people in the middle are actually the most well-rounded people because they like still kind of sort of work hard, right? They kind of sort of know what they're doing. Like, but it actually is like this very weird middle ground, which sure, there are plenty of outliers, but like, that is maybe not the best place if you want to have extreme outcomes like you guys have had.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you remember before I was talking about like how in my first company, I left all the people who helped hack through the jungle in the jungle. This time around, it was really important to me that I was going to take all of these interns or, the kind of like the younger people and teach them as we were going. So that they would be able to drive a bus by the time that we needed them to drive a bus. And so that was really important to me, is to like pair them with older people, grow them, help them to understand where they might be blocked so that they're prepared to take on big pieces of our organization. And one of the coolest things about running a company, especially a company that has like grown as much as we have, is watching people's careers just like skyrocket. You come in as an intern and then you're running a division of the company, and like it's just been really humbling to see.
I forget who wrote this a while ago, but I read a blog post and it was like, what do you do if you're like graduating college, right? And the argument was like, don't go work at the big tech companies, right? Because you're just going to be one of 20,000 people or whatever. And actually, if you're reading this blog post, like you shouldn't start a company because like you would have already done it if that was who you were. The best thing to do is like go join like a Series B company that is already heavily de-risked, but still has growth in front of it. And so if you were like early-ish at Uber or early-ish at Airbnb or whatever, like you get the brand kind of recognition of the company because of what it becomes eventually. You also learn a lot because you're getting thrown so many different things. And if you're good, you can move up in the organization like you're describing. It's like it's this very unique place to go where you still do get the benefits of like growth in a business, but you don't have to take the founder risk. And so like I always thought that was like pretty good advice in terms of like these young people, like where they should go. And you guys pretty much for the last 3 years like fit that almost perfectly.
Yeah, I totally agree with that advice. Although I would say that I personally believe that people should go into sales first.
Why?
I just think getting your ass handed to you every day, having somebody say no to you time in and time out, is really valuable. And so if there's any, some people have sales experience growing up, like for example, Mormons have to go spend 2 years on mission being told no over and over and over. But I think having time in your life where you are trying to sell something and being told no constantly is pretty important.
I've never told this story, I think, on this podcast, but you want to know one of the first things I ever did in my like professional career? Me and 3 friends from high school started a business, and we were getting local small businesses to sign up for almost like a Yelp type product for local schools. And you know how we acquired customers? I don't know why I never thought of this before. We would go to a shopping center, like we'd like look on the map and be like, all right, cool. Like you two go to this shopping center, you two go to this shopping center. And we would just like go store to store and we would just walk in and be like, hey, is the owner here? You can imagine like two 22-year-old kids walking in, no uniform, no like, just like off the street, like is the owner here? And the people at the cash register are like, do you have a weapon? Right? Like, who are you? And like, yeah, in hindsight, like you learn how to talk to people, right? Even if you're not successful, like you definitely learn how to communicate with people. You learn very quickly, like, oh, they're interested in this, to your point about like going to Whole Foods, like they don't want just beef, they want these other things or whatever. So like, that's actually pretty good advice of like, just get in front of as many people as possible and get the reps to learn. Yeah,
I think, when we went out to raise venture capital, we must have been in 50 meetings where people were like, no, definitely not. I'm not going to invest in that. There have been several times when I tried to get a job in commercial real estate. I was sleeping on couches and like, just pounding the pavement, being told no. When we first raised money while Bernie Madoff ran off with everyone's money, we were just told no. It just builds this thick skin where you're just like, oh, whatever, I'll just keep going. Like, I don't care. Somebody's going to say yes. We'll just keep going until someone says yes.
As you think of the business today, like, where is this going?
Yeah.
Right. Most people would be like, all right, cool. You get to 5 million. They would just be like, don't break anything. Right. Like just like let the fucking thing roll. 35 million. They'd be like, oh, definitely don't break anything. Everyone chill out. 100. Right. Now you're over 500 million, wherever you guys end up this year. Do you just like run it for cash flow? Do you try to get to $1 billion? Do you take it public? Do you sell it? Do you raise capital? Like, how do you think about the various options? Because it's a great position to be in. Got a profitable business doing $500 million in revenue.
Yep.
But also sometimes like having a lot of options actually can be tough because you might not know what the right kind of clear path is.
Yeah. So for the first few years, I was really enamored with the idea of building this company and selling it as fast as possible.
Okay.
So I did go talk to some grocery stores and try to put together a deal. And like, there was a moment, probably 3 years in, where I was like, I'm going to sell this. And also there have been 2 moments where I got almost to term sheets with venture capital who were interested in investing. And I was like, okay, great. And I could get some secondary and whatever. So, and every time it's fallen apart, generally because I've trusted my gut and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Like I just need to back out. And where I
won't make you name who it is.
Yeah. Thank you. Where I sit now is, I think we're in a really unique position. We have no outside investors. We have no one breathing down our neck. We can kind of do what we want. And I believe that what I believe the opportunity is I want to build an iconic brand in meat. If you think about the brands that you know in meat, like you probably don't know very many. And most people know brands and they're like, yeah, I don't eat that. I know Spam, but I don't eat that. And Tyson. I don't know if you eat that or not. But so
I'm grass fed.
Yeah, good. Right. Exactly. So you're like, I know that, but I won't eat it. Right. And so a brand.
Some Tyson executives watching this like, fuck Pomp.
Yeah, he said it, not me, just to be clear.
I'm just kidding.
A brand that's like stands for doing things right in meat is sorely needed. It's a massive market. And I think that is like what we have the opportunity to do. Mm-hmm. But like if you look at iconic food brands like the Coca-Colas of the world and the Oreos of the world and whatever, like they've been around for 100+ years.
Are the brands iconic because they've been around so long, or are they around so long because the brands were iconic from early on?
I don't know.
Okay.
But if you start to go to school on like what do these companies look like, even Tyson, like
no, tell me.
Purdue,
I'm in school right now.
Yeah, what they look, they all are very closely held.
Okay.
Family controlled.
Okay.
Multi-decade, if not 100+ years old. Mm-hmm. And so that appears to be the playbook.
Is that a key component to making it last so long and being iconic, is that there aren't a lot of cooks in the kitchen and it's like one family usually behind these things?
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, some of them have gone public, but like the family still controls it. Mm-hmm. I have no idea. But when you look at it, you're like, okay, there's a pattern here. Mm-hmm. Mars, huge company, privately held. Cargill, also a huge meat company, privately held. So there's just a number of these. And I got really like, okay, I think that meat needs to be transformed in this country. And I'm kind of like, I've gone from being like, all right, let me sell this as fast as possible to like, I think this might be my life's work. Like, if I could like spend my life trying to change an industry where there's a tremendous amount of suffering in terms of the animals, the environment, like the farmers, there's a lot to fix. If I could spend my life doing that while running a big profitable company, like, fuck yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay. This is a topic that nobody wants to talk about publicly. Behind closed doors, I have many friends that all laugh when they hear me talk about it. At dinners or, we're hanging out, whatever. They're like, dude, I hear this like life's task or life's work or whatever. That's bullshit. I just want to make money. Or the thing I want to do is like serve my customers, but like I've got 20 other ideas that I want to like go build companies with, whatever. Maybe 5 years from now, they're like, oh, this is my life's work or whatever. But like the transition, it's the same company.
Yeah.
Right? You didn't start out and be like, this is going to be my life's work. You kind of were like the opposite end of the spectrum. Totally. And you were like, oh, this hobby business. Oh, maybe I could just like flip it for some money. And then like it grew into your life's work. So like, how do you think about that in hindsight? Is that actually the like more sustainable path for it to potentially be your life's work? Or do you think that no, you could start out from the beginning and be like, this is my life's work, and then just go, or you can do what you did. Like how important is it to almost like have low expectations? And I recently read a book and it says happiness is expectations minus reality. And so like if you had like hobby and it turns into $500 million in revenue, like you pretty much exceeded expectations. So like how important is that?
There's a really great book. It's out there. It's called The Way of the Superior Man by David Data.
Okay. The Way of the Superior Man?
Yeah. It's, I mean, just
I wasn't
as a
in
disclaimer, it's like very graphic, very sexual, pretty misogynistic. But there's some good content in there. It's really good. One of the things that he talks about is purpose.
Okay.
Living with purpose. He talks about men in particular. I think he's wrong that it's just like really a men thing. I think it's men and women, but men with purpose, right? And one of the images in the book is like this idea that your purpose is like peeling back an onion. And so you might be on purpose. Like my first purpose was like, I'm going to prove that I can start a hobby business and not raise outside capital, chip on my shoulder. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, that's done. What's next? And it's like, oh, here's another purpose inside of it. And for me with ButcherBox, like ButcherBox has always revealed like another deeper, more important, maybe not more important, but deeper purpose for me to be going for. So it went from like build a hobby business to build a huge company that I can make money to like, okay, like I guess I'm just supposed to go try to transform meat, which seems like a really big undertaking. And I think that, oftentimes people, they want to think about this like purpose way out in the future. Like this is what I'm looking for, rather than like peeling back one piece of that onion. One of the things David Data says is like, if you need to pee, your purpose is like, you need to go to the bathroom. Like you need to be on mission to go to the bathroom. Okay, great. You've gone to the bathroom. What's your next like purpose in life? And thinking about that, like some purposes can be really fast. Some purposes can take years, but being on purpose, living on purpose is far better, at least for me, than the alternative and not knowing where you're going.
This is fascinating because Ranjay Gulati, who's a Harvard business professor, has a whole book, podcast, et cetera, around purpose. They went and did a big study. Companies that have a clear purpose drastically outperform businesses that don't. Then if you read Robert Greene, many of his different books, but something like Mastery, he talks a lot about life's task, right? Like you got to figure out what that is, and then you're off to the races. If you then go and you look at maybe somebody like, so you have Ranjay, you've got Robert. Maybe you could even look at somebody like a Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't know if you've seen him, Strive Asset Management. All of these C-suites and board of directors, et cetera, are becoming very like ESG centric and all this stuff. And he basically shows up and he's like, listen, the purpose of this business is to make fucking money. right? And so like, cool, I get that other shareholders want you to do other things that aren't actually what makes us money as shareholders, but like, here's my letter to the board, go make money. And his whole thing is like, you can't serve, 5 different masters as a purpose. Like you have to have one. And is it to make money or is it to not, whatever. And so like, there are these different data points throughout, I think, business and society in general around purpose, but most of them are talking about purpose as like a singular thing. What you're talking about here is like, the purpose can almost evolve.
Yep.
And in some way, your purpose got bigger. And I wonder how much of that is like you gain confidence because you're like, oh, the business is bigger. Oh, there's more profit. Like I actually have the potential to do more. Whereas if you're sitting there Memorial Day weekend, you're like, I'm going to change the meat industry. The intern might not even come work with you, right? And so like how much of it is like the success of the business almost gives you more confidence to like, can I go a step further?
Yeah, it gives you like permission to say my purpose is bigger.
Yeah.
So I, going back to the very beginning, I definitely started searching for grass-fed beef because I thought it was a much better option environmentally for the animal, for the end consumer, et cetera. And so I guess right from the start, I knew that the industry was broken and needed to be fixed. I just guess I didn't think that I would actually make a dent in a massive, super entrenched industry. But that's changing. Like that's actually literally changing.
How big are the other companies? Like the Cargills or whatever?
I mean, Cargill is a $125 billion privately held company.
125 billion.
But they do a lot of ag.
Like valuation or revenue?
Revenue. Yeah.
Jesus
They're the
Christ.
largest or second largest privately held company in the world. They're freaking massive.
How big do you think their meat business is?
I mean, meat is a multi-$100 billion industry in the United States.
Yeah.
Just in the United States.
But like is Cargill the largest?
There's the big five. So Tyson, National Beef, JBS, Cargill, and I'm forgetting one of them.
I'm sure there's nice people that work on all of those.
Oh, totally.
When Texas Slim came on the show, he said a lot of nasty things about all of them. Not about the people, but about the way the businesses are run, all these issues that you're talking about. So when you think about $500 million of revenue, does that make you a top 10 player, top 50, top 100? This episode is brought to you by 8 Sleep. Good sleep is a game changer, and the 8 Sleep Pod is the best sleep machine. I sleep on it every single night. A great night of sleep allows you to be healthier, be more rested, and have more energy throughout the day. And on the brand new 8 Sleep Pod 3, you can sleep as cold as 55 degrees Fahrenheit or as hot as 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the secret of thermoregulation. Better sleep, better energy. Get yourself an 8 Sleep. You can go to 8sleep.com/pomp today to go ahead and get $150 off your order. 8sleep.com/pomp. Not only do I sleep on it every night, it literally changed my life, and I begged the founders to let me invest in the company. 8sleep.com/pomp. Go get yourself an 8 Sleep pod and get a better night of sleep.
Like, I mean, certainly top 100. I don't know about top 50, but when okay, so the industry is so grass-fed beef is 2% of the overall beef consumed in the United States.
Okay,
2% out of 100%, right? So it's tiny. And then that is pretty much the case for the other species, like at the level that we're doing. So we do humanely raised antibiotic and hormone-free pigs, and we do free-range organic chicken, and we have a whole bunch of wild-caught seafood and all this other stuff. But each of those markets are tiny compared to the conventional market, right? And so we are a big portion of the claims-based market, as we call it. But
what does that mean?
Compare claims based. It's like meat with claims. So grass-fed beef or antibiotic hormone free or pasture raised or non-GMO or whatever those like claims are. That's just an easy way of saying like meat raised better. So we are a very large portion of the meat raised better market. But it's still like 2% of the overall market. So the people who are really big in this space are the ones that are like using confined feeding operations, using massive feedlots, using massive chicken houses, like all the stuff that you see the undercover videos for. That is how most animals in this country are raised.
I got a lot of questions about this. First is, are they playing both sides? Are they like any one of the big five? Are they like, oh, so here's like the regular stuff, and then, oh, by the way, we also have grass fed.
Well,
and
this is
like
what's
trying to play the game.
This is what's interesting is like, no, so most of those large companies have not really built out any programs, any like grass-fed programs or claims-based programs, because they don't believe that there's a market.
Interesting.
However, watching us, and now that we're like a little more open about our revenues, like watching us, literally us, they're like, oh, wow, there is a market here. Mm-hmm. And so we're actually getting like reached out to by those large companies being like, do you want to partner with us? Like, would you be, if we raised animals to this standard, would you be a buyer? Which is fascinating. It's like,
would you?
Yeah.
If it met the standard.
Yeah, because we'd actually be changing the industry. Mm-hmm. You know, I was asked recently, like, what do you do? What would happen if we're like 10 years in the future and these big companies like all partner with you and they all build out their own programs and now they're bigger than you and they've like squeezed you out and you go out of business? And I'm like, I don't know. If I could get all those companies to like actually change their practices and do things the right way, like I think I've done my mission. Like I did it. Like, that's fine. Put me out of business. Like, whatever. I'm sure I'll figure out something else to do. So
start another hobby.
It's okay. I'll start another hobby. It's fine. So I'm really encouraged by, you know, we like to work with two types. We like to work directly with small farmers and help them to like grow their business, which takes capital, takes us, cutting purchase orders saying like, hey, if you raise your animals to this standard, we will purchase from you. Mm-hmm. And we're also really interested in talking to big companies and helping them to like figure out how they can like actually do this at scale. And if we have to be the anchor tenant for them to scale a program, like we're
how do you make sure that they actually meet the standard? Like it sounds dumb, but like you can't talk to the meat.
You know,
right?
Interestingly,
like how do you make sure?
Interestingly, so there's a whole bunch of third-party stuff you do, especially around the humane certification stuff. Mm-hmm. So all of our stuff is like certified humane. You need to like make sure that it's raised to the right standard. There's a few certified humane certification agencies. Antibiotics and hormones are an affidavit. It's written. There's no test. So you can say like, yep, wasn't fed a hormone, wasn't fed an antibiotic.
Does that need to change? Like, do you think that they should have a test?
We've talked about like random sampling our product. But what I was going to say is interestingly, like, unfortunately, oftentimes it's the smaller players who get in trouble who start cutting corners. It's rarely the large players because they just have too much to lose. Mm-hmm. And I know like you look at big ag and you look at the way they treated animals and maybe that sounds backwards. Like that sounds like, you know, I'm giving them a pass and like, but if they're going to sign their name on something that says this animal was treated this way, mm-hmm. the bigger you are, the more you have to lose, mm-hmm. right? And so I've unfortunately, and we've worked with these people, like we've definitely had stories of farmers like their herd gets sick, right? And you got to understand when you're a farmer and you're raising 50 head of cattle and you got a loan and you're raising them to a grass-fed standard and they get sick, and so you give them an antibiotic to like keep the cow alive. But now they're not supposed to be in the program anymore because they were fed an antibiotic and we're never ever antibiotics. And so what do they do? Mm-hmm. Sometimes they are forced to lie. Yeah. And I'm not saying that that's like a huge thing in our business, but it's definitely, yeah. So there's, you have to do careful monitoring of everybody, mm-hmm. What they're doing. And I think we can do a much better job of this using technology, which mm-hmm. is really nascent. Everything's done on paper. It's a huge industry where like millions of heads of different animals trade hands, and it's all done on paper.
I mean, what's crazy about this is like ancient Rome, right? Like people were literally trading livestock, doing all this stuff. And like, sure, we have like, I don't know, maybe printed paper, right? But like not that much has changed from like the pure like transactions. Now people laugh, like, oh, all this other stuff changed, whatever. But like, yeah, the basic idea of you're going to raise an animal and you're going to sell it to somebody else, it's like still pretty archaic.
Yeah, very. And there's really not a lot of tracking, not a lot of there's not a lot of data going back and forth. There's not a lot of I think that there's this area is rife for disruption. First of all, so every cow starts out exactly the same. It's cow calf for 6 months, and then it's a cow living on pasture for a year. And then after 18-month-old cow, 98% of them go to a feedlot for the last 6 months. And the problem with a feedlot is when you're that farmer who generally they buy the cow at 6 months old and raise it for a year. The problem with the feedlot is the feedlot is going to put corn into the cow and grow it to be as fat as possible in 6 months. Whatever the price of corn is going to dictate what they're willing to pay that farmer. So the farmer is actually like at the whim of the commodities market, and they're just trying to like raise animals. And so, I mean, for years, the farmer has lost money on every herd that they put through their farm, like that person. Grass-fed is like, hey, don't sell to the feedlot, just keep it on grass. They could conceivably do it on their own grass, or they could that is absolutely could be a program. The problem is that the farmer's loan is due from the bank. So in order to get the next herd, they have to pay off the first herd. And so they actually can't keep the animal for an additional 6 months, 9 months, just eating grass because they have to get another herd. And like, this is a problem that I think.
How big are the loans?
Oh, millions of dollars.
Got
yeah.
it.
Because if you have 50 head of cattle, that's a small herd. You're talking about a couple $1,000s per animal. They can be big.
Yeah.
And so I actually think it's a really interesting application for like Bitcoin or for crypto to like, because there's an increasing value of that animal as it goes along. And if you can like marry all these subscribers that we have who want something raised differently, and you can marry that with like this animal that we just need to break it through that last stage, you could have something really special.
Yeah. Is that something that you guys want to actually do yourselves? Like, at least try to figure
or
out
partner
yourself?
with somebody. Yeah, for sure.
And as you continue to do this, can you eat into, or do you have interest in eating into other parts of people's grocery bill, or is it just meat?
We've started eating into other parts of the grocery bill. So we ship frozen in the mail, and we really are looking at anything that is frozen. We've moved,
But not ice cream.
Not ice cream. We do sell smoothies on our site. We are talking about doing dessert at some point. Ice cream's tough to keep frozen in the mail.
Okay.
Which is why it wouldn't be like my first product. We have eggs, egg bites, and butter coming out soon. We've moved into jerky, so we're doing kind of things in the periphery, but we haven't done like frozen vegetables.
And is that because there's like a health angle to it, or that's because like literally it's hard to keep frozen or stuff like that?
It's really a capacity at this point. We actually are going to be doing pet treats this year, which has been highly sought after from our customers. And it really helps balance the animal. It uses pieces of the animal that don't get eaten normally by humans. So it helps us like balance kind of all the cows we're using.
So as you're like watching this continue to grow, you get increased confidence. Kind of, I just think of like, it's working, it's still working. Okay, shit, like maybe we have a business, right? You can do all kinds of crazy stuff, right? Like you've cash and you're not beholden to anyone. How do you evaluate what to do and what not to do?
Yeah.
How much of it is the customer? How much of it is like, we want to do this, like we're excited about it? How much of it is like an economic decision? How much of it is something else? Like just what's the framework?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think so we have a purpose and we have a mission. Our purpose is really more of a feeling, and it's this idea of being able to confidently feed yourself and your family like something that you trust, right? That you put Butcher Box in front of yourself and you're like, I know that they went to the nth degree to like make sure that this is the best possible quality, the best possible price, and they did all the vetting that I don't have time to do. The mission of the company is to transform meat. So when we decide on moves to make or things to change or like things to invest in or money to give away to, we're really looking at that mission and that purpose and deciding like, does this help us transform meat? Or, so that's like kind of the purpose mission side. Or how does this help us be more sustainable so we can live for another year by helping us improve gross margin or improve like the fundamentals of our business? So we actually the past 2 years, we opened a dry ice facility So we opened a dry ice facility in Oklahoma City, and we're opening another one in Iowa. And the reason why we did dry ice was, first of all, the machines are comparatively cheap, and they'll put you on like a 5 to 7 year, like 0% down thing, and you can depreciate the entire thing in year one. So that's like pretty good financially. And secondly, if we don't have dry ice, we can't ship a box. Like if we don't have bacon and you have bacon in your box, we can ship you the box and be like, sorry, we ran out of bacon. Here's your box. But if we don't have dry ice, we can't ship. And so it was this critical bottleneck where we were really looking for like, what are the critical assets that might be hard to get in the future or that we'd want to control in the future.
Do you think like the big meat players would like go squeeze you with the dry ice?
Well, actually, dry ice got really squeezed over the past 2 years. It's been
why?
So at the beginning, during the pandemic, so dry ice is made from CO2. CO2 is generally a byproduct from manufacturing. The number one manufacturing thing that is a byproduct from is ethanol. Because of the pandemic, nobody was driving their cars. There was a lot less gasoline being consumed, so there was a lot less ethanol being produced, so there was a lot less CO2 being produced. Then Coca-Cola and Anheuser-Busch and all these other guys were like trying to buy it all up. And so...
Because they need dry ice too?
They need CO2 for their drinks.
Oh, got it.
Right? So CO2 became like hard to get. And then all the dry ice, when the vaccine started shipping, they were all being shipped frozen and on dry ice. And so then there was just a huge influx of dry ice demand with like small amounts of dry ice capacity. And so we were one of the few companies that shipped on dry ice that like didn't really have a problem. I mean,
why didn't you have a problem?
Because we controlled our own destiny. We had our own tanks. We had our own CO2. We had our own agreements with people already, like when they put in the tanks that they were going to fill them at some sort of interval. And so where some places, even in the facilities we were shipping out of, were like, we can't ship this week. We don't have dry ice. We just kept shipping because we were able to control our own destiny.
What else are you scared of that somebody could like take away from you?
Oof.
Like what about the boxes? Those are plentiful?
Yeah, they're. I mean, we ship in a cardboard, a fully recyclable corrugated cardboard box. Let's see. What are we scared of that people could take away?
Plastic
from us?
bags?
Well, one of the interesting challenges that is going to come up is California just passed this law, Prop 12, where it's an animal confinement, specifically pigs. And what that is going to require is for pigs to be raised differently because California is a massive meat market. We helped to push Prop 12 forward, knowing that it was going to hurt our supply in the short term.
Okay.
Because
why did you do that?
Because it just transforms it's like it's where meat needs to go.
Shoot yourself in the foot to push the industry forward.
Yeah, and so like that's like kind of a window into how we would make a decision. Like, should we support this? And it's like if you thought about it, just like if let's say we were publicly traded and we're like, well, that might mean that we're gonna reduce our gross margin in pork for the next 5 years as like the industry heals itself. You could see where you're like, yeah, let's actually go on the other side. Let's be against the regulations.
Our shareholders may force us to.
Yeah, exactly. Like because you have that fiduciary duty to your shareholders. If you are private without outside investors, you can kind of be like, well, what's the right thing to do here? Well, we think ultimately the reason why we started this company is because we think that pigs should be treated better. So like, let's be on the other side of that. Yeah. Even if it hurts our supply in the short term.
What's your day-to-day like? Like you plus your employees own 100% of this business.
Yeah.
You sleep till like 11 o'clock in the morning? Or?
Yeah, just kick my feet up, relax.
No, totally. Like what does like a normal day look like?
Totally. Okay, so I have 3 young girls. I have 2 6-year-olds and an 8-year-old. So my morning, usually I'm trying to get up before they get up because once they get up, I'm like shorter to cook and preparing their lunches and doing all the other stuff. It's just chaos, yeah. So if I can get up,
I have a 1-year-old and it's already chaos. 3 girls, 6 and 8.
Good luck.
Nah, I'm good.
Yeah. So like if I can get up with something like 5, spend some time meditating, stretching, just like writing in a journal. That's a good day. Doesn't always happen, but that's a good day. Then they get up, and from 6 to 7:45, I am like on demand.
Yeah. You're dead.
Yeah. Just every request possible getting thrown at me. And then they're off to school. And so I'm now trying to figure this out. We just opened an office. I'm trying to figure out, like, what does my daily routine look like?
You didn't have an office before.
We shut down our office during the pandemic.
Okay.
And then we had a temporary space, but I wasn't going very much. And now we have like a permanent space that we have a long-term lease for.
And you're like going.
And now I'm going, yeah. So I'm going to be going at least Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, going to the office. And then Monday, Friday, I might stay at home and just have like more thinking, walking, whatever. During the pandemic, I would just be taking phone calls and just walking laps of this pond near my house.
Dude, it was the greatest thing ever.
I know, it was amazing.
Like, I don't know why I enjoyed it so much, but the ability to like do the call and no one judged you for like being outside was amazing.
Yeah. I still do that. I can't stand being on Zoom or Teams or whatever, and I try as much as possible to just like be in person or be outside.
I banned Teams in one of our companies.
Good for you.
I was just like, look, it's too hard in the calendar invites. There's no phone number to call in easily, so I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out.
All right, so what time do you go to the office?
So I work out with a trainer Monday, Wednesday, Friday. If I'm
what
doing
do you do
that
in the gym?
So I work out with my old CrossFit coach, and we do both boxing, which I'm really bad at, but learning quick, and just like strength training.
Okay.
Just try to like beat myself up.
You do that in the morning?
Yeah, do that in the morning.
Okay.
3 times a week. And then on the off days, I'm usually doing some sort of like cardio, whether it's a run or in Boston, Harvard University has a really old stadium, looks like the Coliseum, and you can do the stadium where you like walk up the stairs and walk down, which I try to do several times a week.
I played football at Harvard, not going to Harvard, but against Harvard. And I remember just being like, holy shit, this place is like different. There's no other stadium in all of college football like that.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. Okay, so you go to the office 9:30?
Yeah, I would say like 9. I try to be home in time for dinner.
Okay.
Dinner's usually like 5:15 at our house.
Okay.
I have an away message on my it's like the footer of my emails that says that I try to be off the grid between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m.
Okay.
And then sometimes I get back on to check emails. But like if I reach out to you, it doesn't mean you have to reach back out to me. Just like, it's just when I do my work. So I try to be like kind of present between 5 and 8 just to be like with the girls and enjoy that.
What do you do during the day? Like, so you're there from 9 to 5, let's call it. Like, what are you doing?
Mostly meetings. So I have an executive team that I work with, and then I have other projects that I'm working on. The innovation bucket goes up through me because I really love that stuff. And I try to make a lot of time for like ad hoc stuff, especially now that there's an office, like quick 15-minute, like, hey, let's talk about this or let's do this. And then I just spend a bunch of time trying to get the word out about what we're doing, whether it's being on podcast or writing or just trying to like push it forward. But I would say it comes and goes. Like productivity for me comes and goes in waves. Like I don't think right now I'm nearly as optimized as I have been on the productivity front. I think I've got some work to do to like get.
What's the biggest thing that you're like, I know I'm doing this, but like I got to change this?
Browsing TikTok.
I was gonna say whatever you just thought.
I'm working. No, or even like
TikTok?
just like or even Twitter. I mean, it's like I don't know. When the pandemic first hit, my social media like usage went way up, and there was a time where it really felt like I was like working because I need like all this information was flowing. It's just like I need to be doing this, and it now just feels a little bit more like a luxury and not like necessarily like as much work. The other thing is so there's this. I learned from this great CEO. He has like a rule of 10, which is that he will only allow himself to do 10 things at any given time, and he writes them down. Only 10. And so I've started reinstituting that. I've done that at other times in my career as well, where it's like, okay, here are the 10 things I'm willing to work on. And so one for me is leading leaders, which means like I have an executive team and I need to lead my executive team. So like, what are the initiatives that I'm doing this week on that? Or thought leadership, like what are the initiatives I'm doing on that? And so I think when I'm not in the space, then I can just have this big to-do list and it's like, okay, it all seems important and I don't know what to like work on first. And I think prioritizing, especially like when things are tougher, prioritizing is a really good thing to do.
Yeah. I recently read The Practice of Groundedness, this guy, Brad Stolberg. And one of the things he talks about is like we live in this state of hyper alertness, right? Because, and he even says like that used to be a really important thing because like you didn't get killed by the predator, right? But like now alertedness is something that like our ancestors could have never imagined. We're just like touching an electronic every 5 seconds. And he's like, and somehow as a society, we've like convinced ourselves that the more notifications you get or the more emails, the more whatever, like the more important you are. And he's like, actually, the people who like really win the game are like the people who realize like that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And like, how do you separate? But to your point, I got a lot of friends that run a lot of different types of companies, and the people who I think make the best decisions are, it's not all the time, but like maybe once a week, maybe half a day, whatever they can do, they can step back and just be like, where are we going?
Yeah.
Are we like going in the right direction? Am I like doing the things that I need to unlock the team, the product, whatever? And like, it's counterintuitive, but like I think people are waking up to just how important it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I didn't mention this, but I have tried not to work every Friday since I started the company.
Really?
Yeah. It started as like a way that I was going to hang out with my girls because my daughter was 5 months old when I started. But now they're in school and I'm kind of like, I don't think I want to like just load myself up with meetings. So it's my thinking day. Like it's the day that I'm able to like really process things, put things together. Like, and when I'm with the girls, it's like I'm painting with them or I'm like playing with blocks. So I'm like being childlike and also thinking. And I think it's important when you're a CEO or when you're starting a company, I think it's important to give yourself time to think. Because you don't need to be scheduled up to the gills, and you will be if you don't protect your time. Like it's just the nature of the beast.
Friday, I do a very similar thing, but I call it output day. And I try to do no meetings or calls. It's like nothing that's like coming inbound. And it's just like, I know when I get to the end of the week, there's a bunch of shit I didn't do yet. And it's like, I can just mow through it. And sometimes it takes me all day. Sometimes it takes 4 hours, whatever. But I can focus on the things I think are most important, right? Yeah. And what I found is it's great because like mentally you go into the day thinking very differently. And now I violate the rule all the time, but like for the most part, try to do it. But the first 4 days of the week get fucking loaded up.
Yeah.
And so like I've always gone back and forth on like, should I actually have that dedicated day where it really puts more stress on the other 4 days because I know that I'm not going to have any of the meetings or calls on Friday? Or would you be better off kind of like spreading it across 5 days? Yeah. And I don't know what the answer is. But then I also have a friend who now Thursdays, he's doing something similar. I'm like, dude, come on, like let's line up the days, right? So then like if I need I can call you. And so it's like funny because I think, again, it's some of it's thinking, but also some of it is just like, if you're in meetings all day, like you don't, I laugh all the time. Like I don't do my email.
Right.
And then you're like, shit, it's, 5, 6 o'clock. And you're like, I have, X number of email that I have to go do. And you feel like you didn't do anything all day. Right. But you're like, I've been in meetings and now I have to do this. And if you don't answer, then, people get blocked or whatever. Like it gets complex pretty quickly if you don't have a good plan, I think, to kind of take on the responsibility.
Yeah. And I think that we actually do this poorly as a company as well. Like I think, so we're over 200 people now. And I think as you grow as a company, you don't necessarily prioritize like efficiency. And so I hear all the time about people just in meeting after meeting after meeting. And they're like, when do I have time to actually sit down and think, do any work? And it's like, what responsibility do we have as a company to like help people navigate that? I know what like works for me, but I need to like kind of bring solutions to a larger organization. It's one of the things we really want to work on for next year is like efficiency, because there's just too many meetings with too many people who don't need to be there, who are just wasting time.
The executives, how many of them were previously executives somewhere else versus like this is the first time they're being an executive? It's like split.
Most of them have been at this point. Most of them have been an executive somewhere else.
Okay. And your relationship with them are you doing like one-on-ones and like weekly check-ins and all that type of stuff? Or are you just meeting with them as like an executive team together? Or like, how does that work?
Both. So we meet as an executive team once a week. And then I do one-on-ones. It depends on like how long I've been working with you for. We have a new CMO and a new CFO who I'm meeting with at least once a week. But then for some people who I've been with for a long time, it could be every other week or something like that. It's really just making sure that we're coordinated. Like, are we in sync? Are we coordinated? Do I know what's happening?
Explain that more, because I think this is something I see, even I do it, but a lot of first-time founders, they'll set up meetings because they want information.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is an information meeting. This is not like an action, or we're not getting an action coming out of this meeting. And some of them, maybe like the async type communication companies, have gotten really good at like, oh, there's this doc and like I can just go there and see it and I don't have to bother anyone. But like, definitely the companies in office, I still see it all the time, where people like set up a meeting and it's like, okay, tell me what you're working on or tell me what's going on.
Right.
And maybe they have an obstacle or a problem that needs to be solved, but for the most part, it's like literally one person transferring information to another person.
Yeah.
Like, have you solved avoiding that or not really?
Yeah, well, I think the best solution for that problem is Yvon Chouinard, who's the Patagonia founder, had this thing called the 15-5, sometimes called the 515. But basically, it's a weekly update that you have your executive team or whoever is in your direct line. It's supposed to take them 15 minutes to write and you 5 minutes to read. The biggest thing you have to work on is making sure it's only 15 minutes, because sometimes people like write a whole book and you're like, dude, no, it's 15 minutes. Like, set a timer. But, it basically is a list of like, here are all the things that are happening. Here are the bottlenecks. Like, here's what I need your help on. And they do it every week. And so Yvon Chouinard, in his book, Let My People Go Surfing, or I think that's what it's called. That's what it was all about, is like, the only way that I can go surfing and my staff can go surfing is if we have a common understanding of like, here's how you're going to report upon your work. Here's what's going to happen. That has worked. I don't use that with my executive team now because kind of people do that ad hoc. Like, I don't feel like I need to have like a structured 15-5. But that has worked in the past at this company and my previous company.
So I get weekly reports from, I don't know, a number of different people about different things. And what I've found is like, it's helpful for me because I obviously get the information or whatever. It's more helpful for them.
Yes.
Because it helps them. They have to sit down, they have to write like, hey, here's what's going on.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And some of them are like, it's mutually beneficial. And then sometimes I literally tell them, I'm like, by the way, like, I met with you on Wednesday. I know what's going on for the most part. I'm gonna meet with you next Wednesday.
Right.
Like, write it down, because you're gonna come up with, here's the problem, here's 2 potential solutions. And what I've noticed is the best people who do it, they don't do it in 15 minutes. So maybe that's something we should work on. But the specificity.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you can go back and you can look week after week after week. And it's like, it started out and it was like, things are great. Right. And then it's like, X thing shipped. And then it becomes like an actual metric that moves week over week progress. Like, you can literally see the improvement. And it just clarifies thinking.
Yeah.
Which I think is super important. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you get informed? But also, if you can help clarify the thinking, your whole team's better.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that we've worked hard on is our executive meetings or our leadership team meetings, where, I don't just want it to be like, if I'm going to meet with you or if I'm going to get an update from you, I don't want to then sit in the room with all these other people and like, I know all the information. It's like, this isn't worth it to me. Like, you guys meet, I'll just, do something else. So it's like, how do you get like above and beyond just the update into like, what's really holding us back? What are the big decisions to be made? And how do we like collectively think through that stuff?
I won't do the update meetings like in a group, because it's just like, becomes a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Right. But the other thing too, it's boring, but also I always want like an agenda beforehand. And I know people get annoyed, but I'm like, listen, like, again, the agenda, and I'm almost like a little OCD about it. I'm like, well, we're supposed to go to this next point. Like, why are we going over here? And what I found is that like the process is so important if you want to be able to not be in the meeting at some point, like, it's being run correctly. And the single biggest unlock I think I've ever taught any of the different teams how to take notes. Like, it's like so stupid, right? But like every team I've ever worked with, whether I'm an investor, whether I start the company, whether I'm like brought in to help or whatever, if you have 10 people or 6 people or whatever in the meeting and nobody takes notes, I'm like, hey, you should just take notes and just email it to everyone afterwards.
Yeah.
And it's like so stupid. But then what you realize is like, everyone's like, oh, that's really valuable.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing like another one is in the investor updates. It's all the founders. I'm like, listen, just put a section that says how you can help. And if there's nothing to help with, say no asks, right? But like investors are stupid and they scroll through. And if they don't see that, they don't know.
Right.
And they're not going to do anything. They might not even respond.
Yeah.
The last thing I want to talk about is investors. You had VCs, now you don't.
Yes.
Why not? What is your evaluation?
I mean,
you almost dated them again, but then didn't.
Yeah, I didn't.
So you got to the altar.
Yeah, got super close to the altar. Well, first of all, I think venture capital is really important for certain businesses. Like if you're doing deep tech stuff or, building hardware, or like there's a lot of businesses where it makes sense to go raise money. It's also a great way to learn. If you're a young founder and you don't know what you're doing, and if you can get people to give you money to like go learn on their dime, that's awesome. Just know what you're signing up for. And what you're signing up for is like you're on the venture capital train and you don't call the shots anymore. Like you have a boss. And so a lot of people, like, it goes back to kind of like, what kind of lifestyle do you want? They get into a business because they're sick of working for somebody else. They, work on it for a little bit and then are like, well, people are raising money on Shark Tank, so I should raise money. And then they go and raise money and then they get diluted. And then they are not performing and their investors are mad at them and are up their ass and they're like, I'm now working for someone else that's just an investor. I didn't raise money, plain and simple, because my first company failed. And I was like, I'm just going to do a hobby business. And like, I don't need to raise money for a hobby business. And then it got bigger and it was like, well, I just don't think, we're growing this business. I don't think venture capital is going to help much.
You didn't have money problems at that point.
Yeah, we've always had money problems, but I have felt like the money problems have kept us sharper.
Okay.
And so, as I was saying before, like our whole marketing strategy was born out of not having money. If we had money, we probably wouldn't have found influencers. We probably would have just like started roasting through money on Facebook like every other box subscription company did. Mm-hmm. And so it really like that, like the decision to not raise money really shaped the company that we have. And I'm so glad that we didn't, because if we had, I don't think we'd be here anymore. Mm-hmm. I think when Blue Apron went public and started trading really poorly right after going public, all the capital for box subscription companies just dried up immediately. And so if you were one of these businesses that was running like unprofitably and like just hoping for the next VC round, once that hit, you were done. Mm-hmm. And so like I'm an LP in several venture capital funds. I like am an angel in a bunch of deals. Like I'm cool with people raising money, and I think you find the right funds, you can have huge returns, and if you find the right companies, it can be great. But I think it feels like entrepreneurship has become a lot hotter of a space in the past 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I think some of the things that people believe about entrepreneurship are just not true. Like you have to raise money in order to be successful. That's not true. You can build an amazing business. I know lots of people who have bootstrapped boring businesses that are crushing it. And like, I just think that that's not really taught as an option. It's, another one is like lifestyle design. Like I was saying before, is like, as an entrepreneur, you get to choose the lifestyle that you want to have. And this whole idea that you need to like just be all about hustle culture and like bust your ass 24/7, 365 is the only way to get ahead is like bullshit. It's like, I mean, I don't know. The first time I held my daughter, I was like, okay, I got to like reprioritize here. This is because my first company, I worked my ass off. I was in every Saturday. I was like working late. I was first one in, last one to leave. Like, and it didn't work. Like it didn't work. It's just like no matter how hard I tried to push the boulder up the hill, the boulder wasn't going to go up the hill. And this business, I'm like, all right, I'm going to like let go of that. I'm going to hang out with my daughter. I'm going to prioritize my health. I'm going to like do other things. And that's worked really well. And so I think like, I don't know, I just feel like the entrepreneurship as it's being taught right now is very much about like, you need to raise money and then you need to like go bust your ass to like make good on the people that invested in you. And I think it's a road to like anxiety and depression, which is unfortunately a reality with a lot of founders. It's a road to diluting yourself. And I just wish people would do a lot more consideration before they just go and raise money.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot of people who are learning the lesson the hard way.
Yeah.
But also, one other aspect is when you said raise money and learn on other people's dime, I do think that especially young people, they learn a lot from the right VCs. So there's plenty that are absolute idiots and everyone knows who those are for the most part. But there is this idea of like basically they're paying you to some degree. No, not really, but like they're paying you to teach you. And so what's fascinating is that there's very few young founders who bootstrap. And I don't know why. And like there are outlier examples or whatever, especially like 10, 20, 30 years ago. But like today, if you think of, I don't know, you and I probably could rattle off 10 or 20 companies that we know that are bootstrapped. It's almost always the second or third, fourth, fifth company. It's people who've cut their teeth. And I don't know if it's like, oh, I did the VC thing, so like now I know not to do it for this type of business. I don't know if it's like I learned how to build a business, and so like on the third attempt, now here we go. I don't know what it is, but it's always fascinating to me that like a lot of young 20s, let's call it, founders, they don't bootstrap. And is it because they're being told to go raise money, or is it because like there is something about having already run a business that makes you better suited to scale it without the venture capital? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great insight. I mean, I do think that it's helpful if you're young and starting out and people are going to give you money, like just take the money, just to understand what you're getting onto. A lot of people would be like, oh, I'm gonna raise money, but this is the last round I'm gonna do. It's like, that's not how this works. Like once you're on the VC train, you're on the VC train.
You're losing money every month. You're eventually gonna run out.
Right.
The other thing I've thought a lot about, if you look at many founders, not all, like Zuck, it doesn't fit this, Bezos doesn't fit this, but there are, Elon fits what I'm about to say. They have a small, like a single or a double. Then maybe they had like a double or a triple. And then they have some big thing. And maybe the fourth, fifth, sixth, whatever company. Every founder I've ever talked to is like, this is going to be $20 billion company. And you're like, I can go count how many there are out there. Like, there's just not that many $20 billion companies. So maybe, like, yes. But like, would founders be better off just saying like, hey, I'm going to go try to build a $100 million company. And along the way, if somebody wants to buy it for $30 million, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to put, $10 million in my pocket and like, I'm a fucking genius.
Hard to do if you raise money.
Exactly.
Especially if you get into the A's and the B's. I mean, it's hard to do because people give you money at high valuations, and then like selling for $30 million is like not really an option anymore when you just did 5 on 20 or whatever. It's just so, and forget to negotiate like that you get to make the call at the end of the day if you sell the company or not, because sometimes the VCs are the ones making that call and they're like, no, hold on to it. And so, yeah, you end up backing yourself into a corner pretty fast versus if you can keep it small, if you just do like a seed round, if you need money, or if you try to just bootstrap, it's an easier way to get that stand-up single.
Yeah, it makes sense. Where can we send people to find you on the internet if they want to learn more? I feel like you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to some of this stuff.
Thank you. Okay, so they can follow me on Twitter at Mike Salguero. Yeah, anyone can email me as well, CEO@butcherbox.com.
All right. Don't give out your phone number. Somebody recently did that. Said, yeah, call my office. Here's the number.
Give me a call.
I was like, no, please don't do that. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think people really learn a lot from this. We'll do it again.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.